here's this Venusian figure, this bride who's like causing a scene with her body, with what she's wearing. It was so Uranus and Taurus. It's so funny because like guests very often will be like, oh, what happened? Why do you have that sign up?
The Venus-Uranus square of
Yeah.
2023 with the Sun-Pluto conjunction, baby. It took us out. Hey, gorgeous people. Happy Friday, September 12th. Welcome to the very first episode of a new series that begins here and now called AstroWeirdos. This is a new series where I'm going to be sitting down with people who use the language of astrology and this beautiful ancient art form in strange, unexpected, brilliant, and truly creative ways. Not just typical horoscopes, compatibility, vague, new agey language, but genuinely unexpected applications of the astrological arts. We are constantly exploring the ways that astrology can intersect with art and design and music and movies and real lived experiences on this channel. But in this show, I'm going to be pulling on those threads and talking to some people who use astrology as a tool, as a compass, as a mirror, and genuinely apply this art form in ways that I could not have expected and that might instigate our creativity and our curiosity together. For our first conversation, we're going to be talking with astrologer Lindsay Sneed, who works and lives in Las Vegas. She works for a Las Vegas wedding chapel, and she actually uses astrological transits to track some of the crazy little Vegas experiences that she's had. She is also studying to become a psychologist, and she works within Jungian archetypal essences. As we will find out, she shared with us an incredible art project that her and her husband did as a way to get some somatic, lived archetypal experience with her own natal chart and her own natal placements. I'm your fearless host, Alexandra Blair, and as with everything else that happens on my channel, this video is just meant to create more access points to the astrological arts and to create a living collage of interesting things that might provoke and instigate our curiosity and our creativity. I'm also thrilled to let you know that this video is sponsored by Astrotheoros. Astrotheoros is a cloud-based astrology software. I'm going to tell you more about that later, but know that Brandon from Astrotheoros has actually created a discount code for you beautiful people, my listeners. It is the number 9 lives. You can use that to try Astrotheoros for free for a month. You can cancel anytime. It helps support me and my channel. And also Astrotheoros rocks. More on that later. For now, let's get weird with it. I'm so proud to have Lindsay as my first guest, calling in from Las Vegas, Nevada. How are you today, Lindsay?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here. I love your show. I love the idea of this series. So I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here too. Now, I have to tell everybody this story. I met Lindsay this year at NORWAC, the Northwest Astrology Conference, and I had been friends with Lindsay on social media for a while. But when I met Lindsay and I started talking about these transit stories with this Vegas chapel, that is literally what bore the idea of this series in my head. I was like, this is one of the coolest, weirdest astrology things of all time. And of course, since I got that idea, now the Astro Weirdos of the world are coming out of their cave. I'm getting all kinds of like emails from friends that I talked to about this, but I just kept coming back to Lindsay. I was like, Lindsay has to be my first guest. I cannot wait for you to share these stories with the world. But first, Lindsay, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, like your background? How did you get into astrology? And how long have you been studying? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to say that's so funny. That was the inception moment. That lives like rent free in my head. I feel like you were so excited when I told you that I worked for a Vegas wedding chapel. Like you did a full kick and jump. And I was like, oh my God, she loves this. And I love that she loves this. It's always like,
Right.
I feel
I'm the
like
first Astro weirdo.
you
I'm getting it now.
I was born and raised in Vegas. So I feel like I'm really desensitized to the whole just like Las Vegas culture. It's always really fun for me when people are super excited about just the concepts of someone like living in Vegas or working at a Vegas wedding chapel. It's always really fun to get into those stories through the eyes of someone else because it's so normal for me. Astrology has been a big part of my life since I was probably 10 or 11 years old. I initially got into it because someone bought me like a sun sign book as a birthday gift. So I'm an Aries sun, and they bought me this Aries sun sign book. And I remember reading it when I was really young and feeling like, okay, I maybe relate to some of this description of this really bold, athletic, like leader, all of these kind of Aries keywords that were being thrown around in this book. To a degree, I felt like I could resonate with. And also I felt like it wasn't like the full picture of me. And so my feeling as a kid was, okay, there has to be more to this or more to the story. Naturally, I took to the internet and I quickly realized there is indeed more to it than just your sun sign. And from there, I just fell in love with astrology. I'd always been really into like myths and fairy tales from a very young age. I also got really interested in like Jungian and transpersonal psychology. I started seeing a really incredible internal family systems therapist who also was of the Jungian camp. I was the weird astrology girl at my high school. It's so funny that it's so trendy now because I remember us just being super into it in high school. And it was definitely really like people thought we were super weird. I was really interested in like Stephen Arroyo and Stephen Forrest. And so I was leaning a little bit more maybe in like an evolutionary direction, but I was really all over the place. So fast forward to 2021. I discovered the Nightlight Astrology podcast. I'm in the Nightlight Astrology School. I really resonated immediately with the sophistication, but also the simplicity of Hellenistic techniques and a Hellenistic philosophical framework, and also with the archetypal psychological approach. I think up until that point, I didn't realize how all of my interests converged. My love for myth and story and psychology and astrology. I didn't realize how beautifully those things could really fuse together until I enrolled in year one at Nightlight.
Why don't you tell us about how you came to work at the chapel and maybe one of your most noteworthy experiences you've had while working there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work at Lucky Little Wedding Chapel in downtown Las
Cute.
Vegas. I started there in 2021 as an administrative and personal assistant to the owners. And it's a family owned business. And it's actually how I met my husband. His family owns the business. And he currently runs like the day to day operations. Because my role is very like administrative and behind the scenes, I'm not there on a day to day basis. But I do hear stories from my husband and from other staff members. And because I regularly track transits and journal, I've always found the synchronicities between transits that are happening and the types of couples and ceremonies that take place to be super interesting.
Totally. So I think the first one we have to talk about is a Venus-Uranus square that happened in 2023. I'm going to have the chart up right here using Astrotheoros. January 13th, 2023, 7 p.m. What went down, Lindsay?
January 13th, 2023, there was a Venus-Uranus square. And already the staff was anticipating that this was going to be an interesting ceremony because number one, it was Friday the 13th. Um,
Classic.
Anytime we get a Friday the 13th wedding, we're like, okay, this is going to be a fun, like unconventional couple. They're choosing this as their wedding date.
Hmm.
They also called in and requested that we spray painted their rose bouquet fully black. So
That
we're
makes
like,
sense for a couple getting married on it was pretty much
right.
the sun almost conjunct Pluto as well.
Yes, yes. So we're like, okay, this is going to be a fun kind of goth Friday the 13th wedding. Me, knowing that we were approaching a Venus Uranus square, was especially anticipating it to be interesting. I just knew. I was like, when I come in on Monday, I feel like there's going to be a story about this one. So the couple comes in, they arrive, and the bride is wearing this massive fur coat, the biggest, most glorious combat boots you've ever seen in your life. Like, truly impressive. And an all black dress. I believe it was Venus and Aquarius, square Uranus and Taurus. Already, I feel like Venus in Saturn's signs is very goth or punk, like stylistically. But this bride comes in and in typical kind of like Venusian Uranian fashion, she's like flying in the face of tradition. Her outfit is super like attention grabbing and fun. The thing about this dress was, as soon as the actual ceremony started, we realized rather than just having the single side slit, it had two slits. And they started basically like up at her waist. So essentially, all that was covering her was a really thin flap of fabric. And once she gets into the chapel and the ceremony starts, we realize, oh, she's going commando. She's not wearing any underwear.
It was a full slave Leia moment.
Yes. So we're like, okay. So our photographer is doing their best because, like, obviously this bride has intentionally gone commando, but like our photographer is not sure if the bride is aware that like literally every slight movement she makes, she's like fully exposed. This couple had several guests, and it wasn't just like their friends. These guests were like very clearly family members and also children. Our photographers doing their best to navigate the situation during the ceremony. And afterwards, we have an add-on to our packages where if couples want, our photographer will take them out like onto the strip or onto Fremont Street and they get an hour-long photo shoot. So this couple had a Fremont tour booked after their ceremony. And after they left the chapel is when things really went awry. So the family are still fully present during this Fremont tour. This bride, within the first 3 photos, she's fully lifting up the flap and just straight on flashing our photographer.
Oh my
Um,
God. It's
and
so Sun Pluto. It's so Venus Uranus. That Venus is trining Mars. Like, it's horny, it's strange, it's dark.
it's
All of it.
so perfect. Like, I was astounded at how perfect this story was for the astrological weather. Not only is she flashing our photographer, but she's like flashing passerby on Fremont Street.
Right.
This is a very bizarre, provocative scenario.
Yeah, also
Right?
the issues of consent, obviously, in that situation, but also the passersby, just generally.
Right. Because normally, listen, we love an unconventional bride. We love a non traditional ceremony. Like, we love when couples show up and they're being authentically themselves and they're having fun. Like, we're all for it. But this was now crossing the line into definitely like issues of consent involved. People are uncomfortable. And I know there's a lot of like preconceived notions about Vegas weddings, right? But truthfully, this was an unprecedented situation. Like, we had never had a couple do anything like this before. And so our photographer didn't really know what to do. So
Mhm.
they're like trying to be polite with this couple, but they're really uncomfortable. Basically, how they described it to us after the fact was they were just like aiming and shooting, and they weren't even really looking at the photos, that they were just trying to get through the shoot.
You needed an
Um,
Aries Sun photographer to shut it the F down, and instead you
Literally
had a Libra on the case or something. Like,
110%. The whole thing was very intentionally provocative. And here's this like Venusian figure, this bride who's like causing a scene with her body, with what she's wearing. It was so Uranus and Taurus. And this couple wanted to cause a scene. They wanted to be controversial. This is not a precedent situation for us. Then we decide, okay, this is not the type of service that we offer, right? This is not what we do as a business. We can't release those photos to the couple. So this whole situation ended up like we literally have a sign up at the front door now that's essentially any nudity or lewd or inappropriate behavior won't be tolerated. Like, we had to create a whole new policy after this situation. And it's so funny because like guests very often will be like, "Oh, what happened to the like why do you have that sign up?"
the
And
Venus Uranus square of
yeah,
2023 with the Sun Pluto conjunction, baby. It took us out.
literally that's the origin story.
Wow, that is so intense and so interesting. Looking at this chart, right? You gave me the 7 o'clock time for that ceremony, even. It's a Leo rising
Yeah.
moment with the sun conjoining Pluto. Behind every sign is a really messed up story. Now, every time there's a Uranus transit, I'm definitely going to think of the lucky little chapel.
I think that Vegas wedding chapels in general, there's something very Uranian about a Vegas wedding, right?
Totally. It's a
My
quirky
other
city. It's an electric city. It's certainly a city that breaks patterns and rules. It's very Uranian.
100%. It feels very fitting that both of these stories, Uranus is like the main feature, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. This one is much more wholesome and also characteristically bizarre. There is this social media influencer slash philanthropist that does like Instagram reels, TikToks, YouTube videos, where he essentially will approach somebody, and usually this person has been like they've been elected, and he will publicly approach them and do what he refers to as a kindness test, where basically he will ask them if they have any spare change or for some food, and if they're willing to help him, then he will right off the bat surprise them with anywhere from, it's usually like $500 to $1,000 in cash. Essentially, after he presents this person with kind of his like cash donation, he will secretly create a GoFundMe for them telling their story. And then a couple of days later, he'll present them with a donation that he's gathered from GoFundMe. So some mutual friends of ours who know our minister let this influencer know that our minister's daughter has this really rare syndrome called Turner's syndrome. She's about 6 years old. She's had some really difficult medical issues. She had an open heart surgery, just all kinds of things. And so the family was in some pretty severe medical debt, and it was just a very financially and emotionally taxing situation for them. This minister is also a pastor at a local church, and he personally does a lot for the community. Around April 17th or 18th of 2024, the influencer initially approached our minister while he was working at the food bank for the church that he works for, and asks him if he can spare any food. And so our minister gives him a couple bags of food and explains a little bit about what he's doing at the food bank. And the influencer then gives him $1,000. Minister feels incredibly blessed just by that alone. He thinks that's the end of it. Unbeknownst to him, this influencer starts a GoFundMe and shares the story of our minister's daughter and ends up raising almost $45,000 for our minister.
Wow.
After he finds out that our minister also works at a wedding chapel, he reaches out to us and asks if we can basically coordinate like a fake wedding ceremony where at the end we can do this cash reveal. Already, this is super Jupiter-Uranus. Like, it's this really unexpected, sudden, benefic situation. Our minister is being just really blessed in this really surprising way. But on top of that, what makes this feel like extra Uranian and kind of a fever dream is, for some reason, Taylor Lautner was involved.
Sure. Why not? Let's add that
Right.
to the mix.
Let's just toss that in there. I think Taylor Lautner was working on some kind of a side project with this influencer. But for whatever reason, he's thrown in the mix. So the morning of April 19th, 2024, this influencer and his wife get dressed up in like full-blown comical costume store
Full Vegas
disguises.
wedding. Yeah.
Yes. Like they're wearing fake teeth and just crazy outfits. Like they really went all out. They have full-blown disguises on. And throughout this entire ceremony, they just behaved very like eccentrically and bizarrely. And it was so funny because you could see our minister is trying really hard to like to be nice and accommodating and polite, but he's so confused by what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of it, Taylor Lautner is there posing as a guest. I think he was supposed to be like their best man, just wearing like a baseball cap and some like fake glasses. Like
Right.
it was like really obviously Taylor Lautner. So
That is so random and hilarious.
And it was
Jupiter
really
can be
funny.
like so clowny and such a clown show. I
Yes.
feel like this is so funny. Also, it's really funny because this was during a Mercury retrograde through Aries, and Mercury had just retrograded basically from the days you're talking about, from the 17th, 18th, and 19th. It would have gone from being before Venus to back over Venus during this time. So it's interesting about the like, he had this first meeting with the influencer, then the influencer goes away, generates all this money, then comes back to do it all over again after that Mercury conjunction with Venus. I wonder what your pastor's astrology is. Now I'm so curious.
This
I bet he's got
information.
some good Taurus. You got to check that out.
So after this whole crazy ceremony takes place, the minister's wife and daughter come out, and our minister is presented with the $45,000, which was just such a huge blessing to their family. And it was such a sweet moment to witness. They also ended up sending them on a trip to Disneyland, which was super sweet.
That is like one of the sweetest stories ever. When you hear Uranus transit in Las Vegas, like it can go so wrong. But I think this is a
Yeah.
really beautiful example of how not only Jupiter and Venus ruled Taurus, but Venus and Mercury being active there too. That was like a really tense astrological time for a lot of people. And there was a lot going on because that was right after that big, scary Aries eclipse that happened earlier that April. You probably remember with a
I
Mars
certainly
Saturn
do.
conjunction in Pisces.
Yeah, super fun.
Hey, weirdos, quick pause to say thank you to today's sponsor, Astrotheoros. Astrotheoros is a cloud based astrology software, and it is the number one tool that I recommend to students, clients, and friends who are looking to get into transit tracking, secondary progressions, zodiacal releasing, even just casting solar return charts and animating your chart over time. What I love most about Astrotheoros is that it is seamlessly cloud based, which has been saving my ass because in March of this year, I had an eclipse casualty. My laptop screen got smashed. This is what my laptop screen has looked like for the past 6 months. And since then, I have been cobbling together my astrological existence on some weird old iPad that somebody gifted me because they got a new one, and on my iPhone and on my MacBook Air from 2012. Yes, I'm very serious. It's been an actual nightmare, but because I have Astrotheoros, I've been able to seamlessly carry charts from device to device, and I have the same exact experience on that software on every device. That means every random hinge date that you've ever had, every cousin's friend of a friend who had something weird happen to them, every time something spooky happened in your life, you can save all of those charts into the software, and then they travel and talk to each other device to device, which makes my little Gemini information hoarding heart very happy. But honestly, Brandon, the incredible single brain behind Astrotheoros, is really the best part of the project. Brandon cares so much about developing helpful tools for astrologers and developing the astrological community. Even in the time we've been emailing about this sponsorship video, which has just been a few months, he's already hard at work developing some of the things that I've requested as a professional astrologer using the software. So trust that Brandon is always grinding and the software is constantly being updated. But he's just a genuinely awesome and kind human being, and he didn't pay me to say that, and I'm not removing it. So nice try, Brandon. I can sit here and sing praises for this software all day, but the proof is in the fact that I recommend it to all of my clients and all of my students, and so many of them come back to me months later and tell me that they're still using it. Brandon has generously created a code that you can use. It's the number 9 lives. It supports my channel, and it'll get you a month free. It's a cancel anytime subscription, and you can purchase annually or just let it ride monthly and see if you like it. All right, if you're an Astrotheoros lover like me, sound off in the comments. If not, use that code, get a free month, and tell me what you think. Okay, back to the episode. Thank you so much for sharing the lucky little chapel stories. And I know that you also do all kinds of really cool and beautiful things with your astrology. Obviously, you're an astrologer yourself. You can follow Lindsay at Archetypal Essences on Instagram. And I wonder if you would just tell us a little bit about your art.
Yeah, definitely. I've always been drawn to exploring astrology in a more experiential way. That's one of the things that I really appreciate about your show is that you bring in like music and art and ground and embody like the archetypes just into our daily existence. And I feel like I've always done this in a multitude of ways. I make Spotify playlists like somebody's paying me for it. I really enjoy making thematic archetypal playlists, making tea blends for different archetypes or transits or oil blends or incense blends. I'm always looking for how I can feel into or embody the essence of astrological archetypes.
When you say archetype, do you mind like just explaining a little bit like what that means to you or like how you think about the phrase of archetype and maybe give us some examples?
To me, an archetype is the core essence of something. And then that essence can be expressed in a multitude of ways. So, like, when people in my life ask me what the word archetype means, I actually really like using the example of the Barbie movie because it's like there's this like core idea or essence of Barbie. But then the way that Barbie looks, like the way that that actually looks, can vary so much and be so different. There's so many different ways to express Barbiness, but it's like that underlying essence of Barbie is the same. It's a similar thing. Like you look at different deities and mythic figures from different cultures and pantheons, and similar archetypes crop up just with different names and different characteristics. Like most pantheons have like a goddess of love or like some kind of a trickster figure. It's the same thing with astrological archetypes. Whether you're looking at a sign or a planet or the combination of a planet in a specific sign, the word archetype basically just indicates like an inherent essence or certain qualities. But the way that those show up in material reality can vary. The archetype of Venus and Aries can express itself in so many different ways. It can look different from person to person. It can be reflected in traits or experiences or in music or in films. But the connecting thread is that underlying essence of Venus in Aries. And I think that's why there are so many like keywords in astrology, because we're attempting to blend together and describe these archetypal qualities and combinations that have like kind of an infinite amount of expressions. I think for me, when it's really boiled down, an archetype is almost more of like a felt sense than anything. You know, like there's a way that Venus in Aries feels. And the presence of that feeling helps me to identify it in people or in media or in events unfolding, just all in art, like all of these different places and ways that it can show up.
It also makes a lot of sense with your astrology because when you think about interest in the archetypes, that's such a solar and Jupiterian thing. You have literally the sun conjunct Jupiter in Aries, exalted sun.
Yeah.
I might even go so far as to look at a ninth house for something like that, right? Like the institution of an idea, which is how I see an archetype, is
Mhm.
like a ninth house concept, which is where the sun takes its joy. And again, you have an exalted sun, but Saturn ruling your ninth and Saturn in your first house as well is another kind of signifier there. So I just think that's really interesting, and it's part of why I love your work so much. I think you really do like archetypal essences is just the perfect moniker for the type of stuff that you create.
Thank you so much. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. Even in more of a somatic way, like I'm really interested in the way that different archetypes actually feel in our bodies. Whether that's a certain transit is happening to our natal chart and it's activating something. For example, how maybe a transiting Pluto feels on our natal moon, or just in our own like natal charts. Like a visceral feeling that I'm very familiar with is the feeling of Saturn in the first house, like that
Mhm.
kind of like rigidity and rumination
The
and
weight, the
stiffness, like the
gravity.
weight, the gravity, right? The way that I incorporate astrology into my life in general, it's actually really helped me as somebody that tends to live in my head a lot of the time and be very preoccupied with the past and the future. It's actually helped me to cultivate more presence in my life. In a practical sense, that usually looks like simply noticing and appreciating synchronicities when they come up, journaling, and just allowing myself to be enchanted by how multivalent astrology is.
Hmm.
Let's say you're having a certain transit to your natal chart and you're working through something specific emotionally that's connected to that transit. And at the same time, that transit is also reflected in something super mundane that's happening, some sort of repair that you need around your home. And then it's also reflected in the movies that you feel drawn to watching or the music that you find yourself listening to during that time. It's just really fucking cool to me. We can identify these palpable seasons that we're in that express themselves in so many ways on so many different levels. And just noticing that makes my life feel so
Richer.
much richer, yes, and more meaningful, and makes me feel so much more present. I'm not drowning in the season that I'm in because I have a context and a timeline, and I can engage with the present more consciously. In terms of astrology and artistic expression for me, last winter, I was assigned a final project for one of my classes, actually, where I had to create an image and then write about it and apply these different Jungian techniques to it, like active imagination. One of the things that I was exploring at the time was ever since Pluto moved into Aquarius initially, it's been in a really close square with my Scorpio moon because I have a 1-degree Scorpio moon. I've really been doing a lot of excavating and exploration around early childhood themes and kind of emotional patterns. And then around the time that I was assigned this project, I was really making an effort to get in touch with my natal Mars. So I ended up doing this photo series with my husband where he's the photographer. We did this photo series together called Restrained, where essentially I was trying to physically and visually embody the dynamic in my natal chart. I have my sun in Aries in the 12th house, and it's answering to a retrograde Mars. And I also have my moon in Scorpio. And there's been this dynamic in my life that stems from my earlier familial dynamics where it's almost like Mars on a leash. Like I feel like I have this very strong martial presence in my chart, but there's this feeling of being restrained or inhibited or unable to act. So we did this photo series where I essentially tried to embody that dynamic in my chart. And it was really crazy synchronistic timing because, to my point of how multivalent astrology can be, as I was working through this, all of the Mars Pluto oppositions that happened in late 2024, early 2025 happened really close to my natal moon. I think within a couple days of the first Mars Pluto opposition in Cancer and Capricorn, my childhood home, where my mother still lives, flooded while she was at work. A pipe burst in her upstairs bathroom and the whole house flooded. It
Oh
was
my
intense.
God.
The ceiling caved in from up, like the house like practically collapsed. So my mother was okay. She was at work, but the entire house had to be completely gutted and rebuilt. And so it was insane that as I'm embarking on this very plutonic emotional excavation process, my childhood home literally flooded and had to be gutted and completely rebuilt. We decided that the best place to do this photo shoot would be my just super bare bones gutted childhood home. I got really into it. I made like a Mars retrograde playlist, really just tried to feel into it. I found it to be a really healing and powerful experience. And it just really helped me to get to know the archetype of Mars and Pluto. And it was really just going and trying to physically embody what was happening and also like a signature in my natal chart.
How did you feel about your Mars during or after? Did it appear to you? Did you feel that archetypal presence? Did it feel different in your body while you were there occupying it?
Yeah, I think while I was actually there, the feeling that I had was literally number one, just the visual of my childhood home looking so like decrepit. It almost was like, oh, this visually matches the image of my childhood home in my psyche. It looks like how it felt like being there at the time. And I think as far as my natal retrograde Mars, which was really at the heart of this whole project, I definitely know what that feels like in my body. It feels like a lot of inhibition and it feels like a lot of pent up energy that has nowhere to go or no clear direction to be released, going in and actually trying to physically embody that was really cathartic. It was definitely like a release afterwards. Not only did I feel like a more intimate understanding of Mars in and of itself and also my natal Mars, but it also felt through bodying that and intentionally coming into relationship with it, I almost had more autonomy in my
That's actually how
relationship.
I hear that so often from clients, and I found that in my life as well. I feel like Mars is an affliction, and if you give Mars an outlet, you can reroute that energy. And if you don't give Mars an outlet, it is just washing upon you. And so I
Mhm.
think it's interesting that you went there, especially because looking at your chart, like this happened when during those Mars Plutos. Obviously, you said it happened during the first one, which was in November 2024. The other two played out in January and April. This was an unfolding project of understanding, and I'm sure the house and the construction. I think it's pretty interesting because that would have happened in a grand cross to your natal Saturn in Taurus, to your moon in early Scorpio, and then your MCIC, where your MC is conjunct with Neptune. So it's basically like imagining yourself, putting yourself out there in these imaginative new ways. It's really activating your childhood stuff ruled by that sun in the 12th, also ruled by Mars. Like this is a very astrology good photo shoot and it's beautiful. I think you can really feel what it sounded like to be there when you look at the photos. It's like, oof, you feel that. I think of astrology myself as like a kaleidoscope. And I feel like you've talked about it the same way, multivalent. And I think about it like this mirroring mandala that you're looking at. And sometimes things align just perfectly and then they move. And if you don't capture it, you can't totally remember how it lined up. Yeah, a huge part of astrology is just journaling.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't always want to, but I feel like things happen that are just insane that I'm like, I have to get it down. I have to get it on paper. I have to like document because it's just magical and enchanting and cool. I think astrology is probably the only thing that like it will never cease to blow my mind when something
Right.
super synchronistic happens or super emblematic of a certain it will never get old to me. Like it will always just fill me with such awe for the like mechanistic universe we live in that I can't even begin to comprehend.
Absolutely. That's so beautiful. I completely agree. That's a story for another time. But for me, looking at astrology literally cured me of atheism because it was just like, there's only so many times I can see things match up and see things coordinate and see things 100% true and tell somebody something that's true about them when I just met them and I'm just looking at their chart. Like, how many times can I get hit over the head by the universe before I'm like, okay, I have to at least humble myself enough to admit that I don't know for sure. That's where I can get. Like, I'm not interested. It's not my life's work to decide why or where it happens. But there's only
Right.
so many things you can see before you're like, this clearly isn't a coincidence.
Absolutely.
All right, Lindsay, I think that is a perfect wrap up point for the first ever episode of Astro Weirdos. I have been deeply honored to have you as my guest. Like I said, I jumped for joy. Actually, like you said, I jumped for joy when I found out that you worked at a Vegas wedding chapel. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for telling us these fun and wacky stories. I can't wait to hear from everybody in the comments what they've seen in these charts that we missed, or like what the asteroids are doing that we missed. Leave Lindsay some love in the comments. And Lindsay, I know you're a practicing astrologer too, super talented. You want to tell people how they can find you if they're interested in following your work, looking at your art, or booking a reading with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my Instagram handle is archetypal essences. I'm honestly not super active on there at this time, but it is the best place to contact me if you're interested in getting a reading from me, which as of right now, I am doing fully donation based as I build up my practice.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining me for my first ever episode of Astro Weirdos. Make sure you leave a comment below if you know an Astro Weirdo that I should talk to, somebody who's using astrology or astrology transits or astrological practices in unconventional ways. I want to talk to them. Stay tuned, you guys. Catch me on Monday for our first light as usual. Some other stuff coming down the pipeline in October. So stay tuned. See you guys next Monday.